Next week, federal judge Lydia Kay Griggsby will sentence former Baltimore State's attorney Marilyn Mosby, who was convicted of mortgage fraud and perjury. She's facing up to 40 years in prison. Today, though, a number of attorneys, 50-some-odd attorneys, came out publicly calling for President Biden to pardon her. Go to my iPad, please. This was a statement released by attorney Ben Crump. Where he noted that it says National Civil Rights and Personal Injury Attorney Ben Crump, lead attorney Jeff Trevelyan Jr., attorney Barbara Unwine, attorney Barry Scheck, and more than 50 other attorneys are urging President Joe Biden to pardon former Baltimore City Attorney Marilyn Mosby. As the release says, Attorney Mosby is one of several black female progressive prosecutors who have been targets of a disturbing political agenda for standing up for communities of color and for advancing progressive causes. Mosby's vocal opposition to the previous administration sending in federal troops to arrest protesters in the community following the murder of George Floyd and her efforts to hold law enforcement accountable following the killing of Freddie Gray appear to have fueled retaliation. Crump and 50-plus other attorneys listed below are calling on President Biden to rectify this injustice immediately by pardoning Marilyn Mosby. She joins us right now along with attorney Monique Pressley. Glad to have both of you here. First, there's some things we can't obviously talk about because everything that you say leading up to sentencing can be factored in. So you've got U.S. attorneys, you've got the judge all paying attention to all of that. When you started, did you think this is where you would be ending up when, of course, when Freddie Gray happened and people were demanding justice, and when you chose to charge those officers? That's when, and all of a sudden, folks came after your law license and all the different attacks. It's a whole different worldview now than where you were then.
It absolutely is a whole different world. I mean, when you go into a position understanding and recognizing that prosecutors are one of the most important stakeholders in the criminal justice system. We decide who's going to be charged, what they're going to be charged with, what sentence recommendations we're going to make. We make a determination as to whether someone gets into the criminal justice system in the first place. And when you go into it with the heart and the passion to reform the criminal justice system, you don't ever think that you're going to be on the other side of that, right? I went into this with the concept of representing the ideals of what this country is supposed to represent: freedom, democracy, justice. And so to now have that system, which I was attempting to balance the scales and ensure equality for everyone, is now being used against me. It is a very sobering sort of moment.
And over the last 15, 18 months, you're going to court. Your first group of attorneys have to leave. Then you got a second group of attorneys. Mm-hmm. You are then going through divorce. Then you're dealing with the trial, then you deal with the conviction. That is a lot, personally, to have to contend with. That's then, of course, losing the race as well. So it's personal and professional, all collapsing, if you will, at the same time.
So I mean, to be honest with you, it's been mind-boggling. It's definitely been a storm. I think that when I think of all that I've been through, and you've kind of mentioned it, the thing that is most sobering to me is that this is more about my children, right? Yesterday, my ex-husband, I was in a 25-year relationship, and I want to be very clear, like, this attack has been lodged against me to break me. Break me psychologically, break me physically, spiritually, financially. Like my whole entire savings has been depleted, fighting these bogus allegations and now this wrongful conviction. But the worst part is that my children, my ex-husband just yesterday lost his presidential race for city council, and my little girls came into my room and they were devastated. And I said, it's okay, baby. At the end of the day, this is just an election. And in my mind, I'm thinking it's not like he's fighting for his liberty. It's going to be okay. And what my babies said to me, they're 13 and 15, is I don't want Dad to go through what you've been through for the past 2 years. The depression, the isolation, the feeling of abandonment, when everybody around you is now villainized you and made you out to be some sort of corrupt public official, when all that I did was what 35,000 other people did nationally, 739 in the city of Baltimore, right? Like I withdrew my own retirement savings. This is not PPP loans. This is not COVID relief funding. This is me trying to build a better future for my children and understanding and recognizing that they ultimately have been the one to sacrifice the most, and to now know that the government is not happy with the disillusion of my marriage, the disillusion of my political career, but they're still coming after me in a way in which they want to take my sole asset, the only asset that I have, and they also want to put me in prison. I'm facing up to 40 years, but they want to and are recommending that I go to jail for me withdrawing my own retirement savings, which again, in and of itself is ridiculous.
You talked about, again, the personal battles. And I mean, so here you are a public official. And when you're in the public official, you're in the public eye.
Absolutely.
And then all of these things are happening off air, behind the scenes as well. And while all of this is going on, you're trying to sit here and maintain sanity. I've seen you at different times at different events in the last several years. But for people who don't quite understand what that is like, and what you have to endure, walk folks through, and how have you tried to maintain sanity?
To be honest with you, I think sometimes I still think I'm losing my mind, but I thank God for the isolation. I thank God to be honest, I've tried to find the beauty in this traumatic sort of experience. And I wouldn't be able to do that on my own. It was because of the isolation. It was because of the people that I loved unconditionally that showed me the conditions of their love. It was because of the abandonment that I felt, the depression that I went through, the toxic addictions, me trying to numb my pain, that I was able to get through all of that through God. And to get closer and to come out of this crucible stronger, wiser, and more empowered in my faith. And so I don't credit anything but my faith, and knowing that at the end of the day, I know that in that role and in this position, I know that I've done nothing illegal. I know that I've done nothing criminal. I know that I've done nothing wrong. I know that I've been wrongly convicted. And I know that the work that I was doing has everything to do with why I'm in the position that I'm in. When 35,000 other people nationally have done the same thing, and I'm the only person in the position, I'm being selectively prosecuted and now facing 40 years in prison, I have to understand and recognize that it's greater than me. It's not about me, it's about what I represent to so many others. And so when you put that in perspective, then you kind of understand and you can see the beauty and appreciate and have gratitude in this traumatic experience.
More than a year ago, you and a number of other Black female prosecutors went to St. Louis to stand with Kim Gardner.
Yep.
And Kim Gardner has since resigned because of attacks against her. Aramis Ayala is no longer a prosecutor there in Florida. Monique Worrell, who replaced her, was removed by DeSantis. She's now running for re-election.
Yep.
Kim Foxx in Chicago went through a divorce herself, opted not to run for re-election. Ku
Klux Klan came outside her office and demanded her resignation.
I mean, and so y'all had this sisterhood, and when you now look over the last several years, what has happened to all of you, I don't think people quite understand this national attack constantly on progressive prosecutors, but especially Black female prosecutors.
I think you bring up a really great point. I think that there is definitely an attack. I think when you look at the prior administration, the Trump administration, whether under William Barr, where he explicitly went on record and said these social justice rogue prosecutors will do anything within our power of the Department of Justice to go after them jurisdictionally, those prosecutors that aren't prosecuting whole areas of the law, right, jurisdictionally, or whether they're individual politicians, they did just that. It's a larger sort of picture. And you've already talked about it. Fani Willis, Tish James, right? So many of us that are all under the same sort of ire of this prior administration, and understanding that and recognizing that. And I have to say, the vitriol for Black women prosecutors in these roles is very different than the progressive prosecutors.
Right.
Because the progressive prosecutors like Chesa Boudin and, you know, Larry Krasner.
Or Andrew Warren.
Or Andrew Warren, right? They've come after us. And it hasn't just been the Trump administration, but the Trump administration and the cronies. So I had very public disputes with Larry Hogan, right, now running for Senate. This is something that is very much calculated, and the playbook is executed perfectly. It's written and then executed perfectly on everyone else. And so understanding that it's a larger sort of mechanism in which they can try to negate. And Trump just last week came out and said, what is he going to do? He said that he's going to give full immunity to police officers, right?
And said they should be able to do their job.
They should be able to do their jobs, but he allowed them to kill with impunity.
Yeah, he said full immunity.
So when you have prosecutors, and I was one of the first prosecutors to attempt to hold police officers accountable for the death of a Black man, right? You know, after Freddie Gray, we successfully prosecuted 33 police officers after Freddie Gray, right, who were violating the rights of citizens in Baltimore City. When it comes to the gun trace task force, these were corrupt rogue officers planting guns and drugs on citizens for decades. My office was the one who not only drafted the legislation, but lobbied for the legislation and passed the legislation and vacated 800 convictions as a result of those rogue police officers. I mean, it can go on and on. I started the first conviction integrity unit in the entire state of Maryland, where we did reinvestigations into claims of actual innocence, where I exonerated 13 innocent Black men who collectively served 300 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. Now being on the other side of that is a sobering sort of reality, and having that system that we were attempting, and not just me, but my sisters all across this country, attempting to equalize, to now be used against you, and the progressive sort of attacks against others. When it comes to Black women, they use the criminal justice system to come against us.
I mentioned the support that you have been receiving, not just from the lawyers today, but some of the other folks in the community, folks across the country. What has that been like? Have folks been reaching out to you on social media, privately, email, things along those lines, giving you encouragement?
I can just tell you I'm so humbled and I'm so honored. I'm so grateful, you know, to be at the lowest point in your life and to have everything taken away from you, or to be at rock bottom, and to pray and to ask God, you know, just to question why I'm going through what I'm going through, and then for God to send earth angels into my life, like Monique, like Angela Rye, like so many of the local sort of supporters, the Tyrones and the Sheenas and the Hakis of the world who came in and just believed in me and understood that this is an injustice that could happen easily to them, you know, is beside me. And recognizing that this is so much greater than me. I'm so humbled. 14 civil rights organizations have signed on to support the pardon request. 58 attorneys you know, have signed on. I'm just so humbled. And there's been over 40,000 people who have signed that petition, who understand that this is an injustice. I'm grateful to you, Roland. You've always been there for me through thick and thin, and provided a platform for me to be able to express, you know, what's happening, the real, not any misinformation in the media. And so, you know, I'm humbled and I'm grateful.
Do you regret going to public service?
I don't. I always said that justice is worth the price paid for its pursuit. And everything that I did in that role as state's attorney, that was my passion. I did it for the right reasons, and I wouldn't do anything differently. So
for Monique, people who don't understand, who maybe didn't follow this trial, we were covering it, things along those lines. What was the basic crust of the government's case that they accused and eventually convicted Marilyn of?
So first, thank you, Roland, for having us. I appreciate you and using your platform in this manner. One of the reasons that Angela Rye and others of us came together is not because she didn't have quality attorneys, Marilyn does, but as organizers who are part of the civil rights and justice community, it's important to us that people understand that the role of the prosecutor as someone with tremendous amount of discretion, they can charge what they want to charge, Roland. They can go in there, the grand jury belongs to the prosecutor, everybody knows that. So that works for us and against us, but it works against us way more than it's for us. So when you go from having someone like a Marilyn Mosby, who is willing to look at reformative justice, who's willing to look at rehabilitation for those who it's appropriate for, when you have someone who's willing to look at charging police officers when they commit murders on the street, and you take that and you target that and replace it with someone like a Leo Wise, who's willing to target people because of that kind of work, who are willing to look at people who are progressive and say, oh yes, that's who we need to get to next. That's where we are now. So that's exactly what happened in this case. Anytime you've got 35,000 plus people in the United States who are activating the provisions that were provided through COVID relief in order to access their own retirement funds, which is all that Attorney Mosby did. She accessed funds that she had been putting in. Was it $800 every 2 weeks?
$780 every 2 weeks.
$780 every 2 weeks for years until you build a nest egg, which is what this so-called American dream is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be that you go to school, you work hard, you save your money, and then when the opportunity presents itself for you to access your own funds and create for a future for your children, you do it. That was her plan. That was what she was doing. That was what 35,000 other people were doing, 730-something people in Baltimore. And what the government says is that she didn't qualify to be able to do that because she didn't demonstrate a legal standard to show adverse financial consequences or adverse financial hardship, even though the term is not even supposed to be used in this context, in order to justify withdrawal of the funds. Now, Roland, I've been on your show a million years. I'm a stickler for let's figure out what the law says. And sometimes I take positions that are contrary to the popular one because I'm saying, well, this is what the law says. And so if this is what the law says, then this is what we were bound to do when we worked from there. But there was no law. There was no standard. The judge actually didn't have to, but chose to tell a jury, use your common sense to figure out what it means. Now, anybody can look up right now on Google, and if you look up jury and common sense, it'll say, don't do that. Don't ever do that. Asking a jury to rely on their common sense for something that should be defined by code or by judicial decision making is the absolute wrong thing to do because a jury is full of lay people. The jury is supposed to make a fact-based decision. The judge is supposed to apply the law. Am I right or am I wrong, Madam Prosecutor?
So I think you're right. And I think one of the things that she's emphasizing is that unlike financial hardship, right, which has been legally defined, and there's precedents that's already been set, this was a provision that was created under the CARES Act that was defined as adverse financial consequence. This is not a financial hardship. This is adverse financial consequence. That has never been legally defined. When we got to trial, the government's witness, the director of the compensation board for Baltimore City, stated on the record at my trial that the only thing, he never gave anybody any sort of direction, none of the 739 other people, other than what was said in that statute. And he said the way that he defined adverse financial consequence was if you suffered a $50 adversity or more. I didn't think I needed to take the stand at that point, right? If the government put on evidence that I suffered more than a $50 adversity. And so.
But it's not even really about I know that it's about what happened at Marilyn's trial, right, but it's about the fact that there were not 738 other trials. And it's about the fact nationally that there were not 34,999 other trials, because it's akin to, 35,000 people, that's whole cities. That's whole cities in the United States. So imagine if you're living in a town and everybody does the same thing. Everybody receives the same advice. Everybody uses the same provision. And then the government comes in and says, yo mama did it, and we are prosecuting her. That is casebook targeted prosecution. That's casebook malicious prosecution. That's casebook targeted, isolated, ill-meaning prosecution of a citizen.
So there were two trials. So that was obviously one trial that dealt with perjury, and then the second dealt with mortgage fraud. And this was the press release that the Department of Justice sent out, where they said that Marilyn made a false statement in an application for a $428,000 400 mortgage to purchase a condominium in Longboat Key, Florida. As part of the application, Mosley falsely stated that she had received a $5,000 gift from her husband to be applied to the purchase of the property. They then said that, that wasn't the case, that she gave him $5,000, he gave her five back. That was
yes, and at trial
that was the case.
At trial, the testimony came in from the people that advised her that she had been advised that it was appropriate for the gift to come from her then husband, and he testified at trial about the same. So what we're having, and Roland, if you listen to the press release, and I don't know.
I got it right here.
I don't know if we've even called it out in this manner, but the one thing that I want to say that I know that she can't is there's this whole prevailing theme that Black women aren't supposed to have money, that we're not supposed to have savings, that we're not supposed to make smart business decisions. We definitely aren't supposed to have no property that we're buying in Florida while we are government service. We're supposed to be impoverished.
Stay in our place.
We're not supposed to be thinking for ourselves. We're not supposed to be taking advantage of opportunities. So that's why we can have a former president with 91 and sundry indictments all over the United States for doing things like crimes against America, for subverting elections, and he's not facing up to 40 years anywhere right now. Like, he's not up for sentencing anywhere right now, but we've got this Black woman who was trying to help us. And the reason why that matters to me is because I sit here as like a career 30-year defense-minded person, defense attorney. Anybody can check the record and know I've never prosecuted anybody for anything. This is my sister. It is necessary. We say all the time, we need progressive prosecutors who look like us. We need progressive prosecutors who understand us. We need progressive prosecutors who come from our community. But then when they get attacked, we have this side eye, we have this mentality where we're tearing down the very thing that we asked for. All those initiatives that she tried to do and did do successfully, her people who follow her, who don't look like us, who don't talk like us, who don't understand us, they will not do those same things and are not doing those same things. And the reason why that matters in this case is because of this. Anytime you got the NAACP, Until Freedom, Black Voters Matter, and 12 others who all think the same thing at the same time and sign the same piece of paper, like, there's no harm, no foul. There's no debating the clear call that she requires justice. When you've got lawyers like Barry Shett from the Innocence Project, yes, people know him from his being part of the Dream Team, but somebody who is data specific like that, somebody who's devoted their life to defending innocence, when he's signing on with an Attorney Crump, with a Barbara Arnwine, with a DeMario, you can look, there are 5 former National Bar presidents who have signed on the same piece of paper, not just saying we agree that she should be pardoned.
Right.
They represent her. That's her lawyers now. So I say all that to say, yes, they accused her of perjury, for following advice she was given, and for utilizing money from a gift from her own husband. They accused her of defrauding the government for taking her own funds that she had saved for her and her children. And she's supposed to be what sets an example. She's supposed to be the chilling factor so anybody who's bold enough to stand up against the establishment gets the lesson.
Obviously, when it comes to a pardon, that comes down to the President of the United States.
Yes.
Department of Justice, they often do their reviews, they make recommendations. So what you have, though, is this is a DOJ prosecution. And so I take it folks have been trying to get to President Biden because ultimately his decision. He does not even require, Trump didn't even talk to the Department of Justice. He doesn't even have to listen to anybody. He can make any decision on his own.
Yes, he can. And the reason why that matters is this. Pardon power belongs to the Chief Executive Officer of the United States so that if every other part of the justice system fails, a citizen of this country, or even an immigrant of this country who is falsely accused and convicted, still has a place that they can go. We are going to that place now because the system has failed Attorney Mosby. So we are asking for people to sign on to the petition, asking that the president, and you can go to justiceformarilynmosby.com to find the petition. And don't get me wrong, these are people who don't want the prior administration. These are not people who want to see Trump in office again. These are people who understand that President Biden has a unique opportunity to right a wrong and to support the people who supported him and his administration and its objectives. There has been no greater champion than Attorney Mosby. She formed and framed her whole progressive system in her own prosecutor's office after the work that our vice president did in California, and was a staunch supporter of that work when people were out there saying Kamala the cop. So we're asking them now to look and say, look, here's your supporter. Here's your emulator. Here's someone who has done good work for you, who does not deserve what she's being given now. And we're asking them to fix it.
Questions from two of my panelists. Rebecca Carruthers, Vice President, Fair Election Center out of Washington, D.C. Rebecca, go ahead.
Thank you all for being on the show tonight. Marilyn, do you regret taking out the mortgages for the Florida homes?
Yep, Marilyn's not going to answer because that goes to the facts of the case. But what I can say is that her lawyers have said in her papers and in the sentencing paperwork that she doesn't stand in a place of regret for doing what she absolutely had a right to do. And she did deliver testimony in that regard, but I can't let her say it here because her lawyers will hamstring me if I let her speak to the facts of the case while the judge and everybody else
The only thing
is
that I will
watching.
add is that, yes, the federal government was able to come back with this, but let me be very clear that this was something that was being done ever since I charged the officers in Freddie Gray. These folks have been coming for my law license. The past 4 years, they've combed every aspect of my life. They've gone through my taxes, my charitable donations, my campaign contributions. They've gone to my children's dance instructors, my hairdressers. They've knocked on my neighbors' doors at 5 a.m. to interrogate them, my employees. Like, they have gone and literally tried to figure out any way to put anything on me, and this is the one thing that they come back with. And so, to the extent of what Monique has already said, all of that is already prescribed within the sentencing memos, as well as within my testimony.
Robert Patillo, host of People, Passion, Politics, News and Talk 1380 WAOK out of Atlanta, who's also running for a judicial position in Atlanta. Robert, go ahead.
You know, the list of attorneys who are supporting you, add my name to that list, and I'll go to the website after the show to do so. This is a travesty. And beyond even the black female prosecutors, we saw that when this Black Girl Magic movement started rising to power, we saw the immediate pushback from mayors. Think about what Mayor Lori Lightfoot went through, Mayor Bowser, Mayor Cantrell, the mayor in Baltimore who went to prison, Keisha Lance Bottoms here in Atlanta. Whenever Black female politicians rise to power and start to regulate the white supremacist power structure, we've seen this immediate reaction from the power structure to punish them. And what we see on the other side of the aisle is they take care of their own. They make sure that if you're a January 6th protester, quote unquote, they promise to pardon those people if they return to power. What's been the response from the Department of Justice and from the administration on these calls for a pardon? Because it's very clear that they have the power to do so. It seems that we shouldn't have to petition the people that we help put in power.
We haven't had a public response as of yet. I do know that there have been ongoing conversations from the group of us. I'm one of the co-organizers for Justice for Marilyn Mosby. Angela Rye is another. We have been stomping all the sidewalks, making all the calls, but it was just yesterday, Robert, that the official full pardon application was submitted to the pardon attorney with the over 50 names on it, and we will absolutely amend it to add your name. But it also came with like 700 pages of supporting documentation with over 20 letters of support that were sent to sentencing and then sent again, and we are adding affidavits of support as well. So we anxiously await hearing from them.
Yolanda Jones is an attorney out of Houston, also a Texas state representative. Yolanda, go ahead. You're on mute. Hold on, you're on mute.
You got me now?
Go ahead.
So I want to say I'm so sorry for what you're going through, Attorney Mosby. It makes me want to cry, but I will also say that you can add my name to that list.
Thank you.
I'm actually a 29-year practicing lawyer. Criminal defense is one of the things that I do. That's the first thing I want to say. I want to help you any way that I can.
Thank you.
I also want to say that President Biden needs to pardon you. He's got issues with Black people. This is a way he can show us that he's down for us. So we know how he is when he's for people, and he's had a very esteemed group of people asking him to support you. I believe I learned that they started investigating you prior to him taking office, but they didn't indict you until, I think, 2022, once he was in office. Here's what I can say about prosecutors. Their greatest power is discretion.
Yeah.
So you have the right to not move forward on something. And so I think that when people are peeing on us and telling us that it is raining, we need to look to make sure if it's pee. And so I'm watching with bated breath to see what President Biden does since the official pardon request was submitted on yesterday. But I'm here to help you if you need me. Reach out. Roland knows how to reach me. But based on what I've heard and based on what I've looked into, the fact that you are the only person charged federally with this, after I think you said 700 and something people where you're from did it, I absolutely believe it is retaliation for you doing what's right in the criminal justice system. And the question I have for you is, do you believe, based on your communications with other Black women who are doing great things to reform the criminal justice system, that the criminal justice reform movement has been stifled? Are people afraid? Are we going to continue to fight? Are we willing to lose stuff in order to do what's right by the people and by us?
So first and foremost, I say thank you for your support. I'm eternally grateful, especially you being another fellow attorney. You can understand the injustice from a legal perspective. You're absolutely right. I think that this administration can do something, and I had the expertise of Reed Smith and Scott Bolden, who is often on this show, and we were yelling loud. Asking this investigation started under the Trump administration. And then when the Biden administration took office, we were calling and begging for them to please just allow us to go in front of the grand jury, allow us to come and talk to you. Please just look into this. And that didn't happen. But to your question, yes, this has a chilling effect. What is happening to me, the type of isolation that they've been able to create, the villainization of me and who I am, and this idea that I'm somehow a liar and a corrupt public official, None of my colleagues have wanted to touch me with a 10-foot pole. They don't want to be seen in public with me. I've had family members and friends and people that I've loved the most that have turned their backs on me. And so, yes, it creates a chilling effect, not just for the people that I loved unconditionally, but for the individuals that are in this role that can make a decision that have an impact on our lives. So yes, Roland and Monique have talked about it. Fani Willis, Tish James, Monique Worrell, Aramis Ayala, Kim Fox, Kim Gardner. The list goes on and on and on. Andrew Warren, Chesa Boudin, Larry Krasner. These are all of the progressive prosecutors that were attempting to balance the scales of justice in this country that have now been targeted in a way in which they villainize us, they isolate us, and for Black women, they criminalize us.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. And I'll say this. We have prosecutors that are white progressive, and I say that in air quotes, who are doing things, and the government's not coming after them. They're not coming after them. And it makes me sad, and I hear people say all the time, oh, you're pulling the race card, you're pulling the race card. No, we're not pulling the race card. We're defending against your racism. You are using your belief that we are innately inferior to you in order to prosecute us and to destroy us and to destroy our families. And I tell you what, the civil rights movement is difficult. It takes courage, and I commend you for doing what needed to be done. And we are here for you when you need us.
Thank you.
Folks, this is the petition that they're asking folks to sign to seek a pardon for Marilyn Mosby. As you see, 41,944 of 45,000 signatures. If you go to the easiest place to go to, because this is campaigns.organizedfor.org.
The Justice for Marilyn Mosby.
There you go. All right, so that's easy. So justiceformarilynmosby.com. So justiceformarilynmosby.com. Then you can actually access the petition. So you see right there. And you'll see the other interviews and other information. Of course, this was going to be added on there. Y'all know that. All information on there as well. And so...
And come on the 23rd. Come to the sentencing. If you're around, come. Show your
so sentencing is May 23rd.
May
Where?
23rd, 10:30 a.m., Greenbelt District Courthouse.
You said 8:30 a.m.?
10:30.
10:30 a.m. On May 23rd. All right then. Well, Marilyn, I appreciate you coming on the show. You know I always had your back. So
thank you, always.
So we'll continue to do the same, and we'll of course keep letting folks know about the petition as well.
Thank you, Roland. Right. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
I wanted the people of Baltimore to hear it from me. I have done nothing wrong.
Prosecuted for the people. But I see that what you are trying to do is destroy this Black woman for doing her job.
I have heard your calls for no justice, no peace. However, your peace is sincerely needed as I work to deliver justice on behalf of Freddie Gray.
Marilyn was a force to be reckoned with. I was assuming this was all because of Freddie Gray, but it actually is much deeper than that.
Baltimore's top prosecutor, a woman named Marilyn Mosby, was indicted yesterday in the Eastern District of Maryland for perjury. Couldn't help but think about Donald Trump.
This is what you got to deal with when you are a Black woman fighting for just causes in America.
Yeah, but just taking on the police, period. She's stepping on their toes. They want to cross her out of the system so she can't stand up for the preacher.
Reached in the pool and grabbed me and pulled me out.
Imagine if this were you. You would want people to stand in your corner.
I lost my car. I lost my job. I lost my marriage. And I almost lost my mind for a little while.
It's just so much right now, Lord, and I'm just saying, why are you putting all of this on me? I'm about to break.